Hello, I hope you're well, and welcome to the Real Truth channel with me, Warren Thornton, where we look at issues that the mainstream media and the governments probably don't want us to tackle. We will also be having a Patreon channel, which will be a subscription based channel, which will have exciting guests on and members of the public who subscribe to the channel. I think if you subscribe to the channel, you're entitled to a voice, and very much the normal, ordinary working man and woman in the street is stopped from doing so, or indeed is shouted off various platforms. Well, here we'll give you a voice to be able to talk about the burning issues that are important to you, with guests who also have views on those issues, and we've got some very exciting ones lined up. As I say, that will be a subscription-based Patreon channel, but also we will be available on Rumble, on BitChute, on Telegram, and YouTube, where we will be tackling all sorts of issues that don't really get the highlights that they should. So we're going to look at one today, and we're going to look at Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Was it justified? Well, there are three reasons Russia say it is. So we're going to look at the very first of them, and then we're going to ask some questions at the end that, if you are truly, truly honest, may come up with an answer that might shock you. So we'll start with the first one, and we're not going to be talking about any other issues bar this one here today. We're going to be talking about NATO expansion eastwards. This was one of Russia's three core tenets for invading Ukraine. Is it justified? Let's look at it. So in 1949, Belgium, Denmark, France, Iceland, United Kingdom, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Portugal, Norway, Italy, thought that was more Mediterranean, but there we go, Canada and the USA joined NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. In 1952 to 1982, Greece, Turkey, Germany and Spain joined this NATO organization. One of the problems with Turkey joining was it almost brought about World War III, because the Americans promptly went and put missiles in Russia's backyard by putting them in Turkey. Russia then retaliated by putting nuclear missiles in Cuba, which made the collective Americans lose their mind and almost started World War III. The problem you have when you place those sort of weapons in neighboring countries right next door is those missiles could probably reach you in 4 or 5 minutes. Now, what then happened was, ever since then, the Americans have adopted the Monroe Doctrine, which was made for something completely entirely different, and used that to say that nobody can place any missiles in the Western Hemisphere without their express permission, and to do so would be an act of aggression. And that is very important to remember. We also have to remember NATO's bombing of Yugoslavia in 1999, when it thought that the Yugoslavian people were bombing and indiscriminately killing ethnic civilians. So you need to bear that in mind, and the fact that weapons of mass destruction was halfway around the world, yet we still felt it necessary to go in. And indeed, over 500,000 children died in that conflict, including using weapons such as depleted uranium. Now, when we talk about the NATO expansion, they were asked to stop when the Berlin Wall came down. The breakup of the Soviet Union was underway. There was an agreement, not a written one, a verbal agreement, and there are many, many State Department documents. There are many, many emails that suggest this to be absolutely true. I know the old Samuel Goldwyn saying of, a verbal contract is not worth the paper it's written on. However, there was this tacit agreement. I believe it, and many, many very clever commentators also know this to be factual. The Americans have denied this agreement was ever in place. So let's have a little look. In 1999, after Bush and Gorbachev, under this agreement, had said there would not be 1 inch forward in terms of NATO expansion if the United Germany was allowed to join NATO, which it did. We then had Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic join in 1999. If you work out with all of these proximities how close these were to Russia, and you also have to bear in mind, it's not how you feel about this situation, it's how you think the Russians might have felt, and what would happen if this started happening in your country. So, say if you live in the United Kingdom, if they started to put missiles into Northern Ireland and on Guernsey and in Guernsey and into France and on places like Rockall or in Scotland or Wales, for instance. If you live in England, I don't think you'd find that too clever. Same in the United States, if rockets were put in Alaska, Mexico, and indeed any of the Latin American countries, or even Cuba, you might find that the Americans or the British would very much be going in long before now. So we'll be asking a couple of questions at the end. In 2004 and 2009, things really got underway with surrounding Russia, in that Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Romania, Lithuania, Croatia, Slovakia, Slovenia, and Albania all joined NATO. Now, it is important to remember that in 2007 and 2008, the Russians said, stop, no more expansion NATO-wise east. Stop this. In 2017 and 2020, between those 3 years, Montenegro and North Macedonia joined. Now, again, there was a stop. Please stop doing this. In 2021, aspiring members joined, and it was said that aspiring members would be allowed to join, and they were Bosnia, Herzegovina, Georgia, and Ukraine. Ukraine, they were told, would be the last and the brightest of red lines, and that the joining of Ukraine would trigger an absolute response from Russia. This was a warning issued in 2007. This was a warning issued in 2014 when the Ukrainians first started attacking their own citizens in the eastern part of the Donbass, with not a Russian in sight. And ever since the conflict, we've had in 2023, Finland, Sweden, and Serbia all deciding they're going to join NATO. So you have to ask yourselves, the first question is, if it was your country being surrounded like this, would you have acted sooner, and would you have put a stop to this? The second part of this, despite the Minsk agreements that were absolutely told by West, Angela Merkel has actually come out and said that they were just to buy time to arm Ukraine. How are we going to stop a war if, when the Minsk agreements were broken, the Russians have no trust in us whatsoever? And how do we put a brake on this before it gets out of hand? The next question you need to ask yourself, were Russia justified? In this instance, when you consider that we have attacked and in fact invaded countries for far, far less and for far less provocation, do you feel that Russia were justified in their invasion of Ukraine when you consider what the Ukrainian government, and remember that Ukraine were overthrown, the democratically elected government in 2014 were overthrown in a coup. So we're not talking about a sovereign nation here. We're talking about a banana republic or a rump state that has had 2 overthrows in the past 10 years. Let me know in the comments how you feel about it, and thank you for listening.